$760 million worth of cocaine, gold-plated Harley-Davidsons, Rolls-Royces worth more than most people's homes, a military-style training camp run by a former U.S. Marine. This isn't a Hollywood script. It's the true story of Australia's wealthiest criminal empire, the Comanchero Motorcycle Club, and what police uncovered about their money laundering operation is nothing short of incredible. Over the next 20 minutes, you'll learn how a biker gang built a financial empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, laundered cash through luxury vehicles and high-end real estate, and how a single police operation brought their empire crashing down. But first, let's go to the moment that changed everything. November 30th, 2024. As the sun set over the Queensland coast, the Australian Federal Police intercepted a vessel carrying the largest cocaine shipment in the country's history, 2.34 tons of pure cocaine, with a street value of $760 million. But the most surprising part? The man allegedly behind the operation wasn't a South American cartel boss. He was the vice president of the Comancheros Brisbane chapter, a biker who had helped build one of the most complex money laundering systems Australia has ever seen. And this was only the beginning. The Comancheros weren't just drug traffickers. They had built an entire financial ecosystem to clean their dirty money. They bought multi-million-dollar properties. They operated fleets of high-end vehicles. They even financed military-style training programs. So how did a motorcycle gang become Australia's most lucrative organized crime group? And how did they almost get away with it? To understand that, we have to go back to where it all began. In 1968, a tough Scottish immigrant named William George Ross arrived in Sydney with nothing but a dream and a passion for motorcycles. After watching a John Wayne film called The Comancheros, he decided to start his own club under the same name. But Ross wasn't interested in weekend rides or charity runs. From day one, he had a bigger vision: wealth, power, and control. Ross declared himself the supreme commander and ran the club like a paramilitary unit. He forced members into weekly combat drills, formed an elite unit called the Strike Force, and famously posted a sign in the clubhouse that read, "If it's white, sniff it. If it's female or it moves, use it. If it talks to police, kill it." This was more than a motorcycle club. It was the foundation of a criminal enterprise, and Ross's military-style leadership became the model for everything the Comancheros did next, including how they would eventually launder hundreds of millions of dollars. To truly understand the Comancheros, you need to know how violent they were willing to be. September 2nd, 1984, Father's Day in Australia. At the Viking Tavern in Milperra, Sydney, the Comancheros clashed with former members who had defected to a rival group, the Bandidos. The fight started over drug territory, but it ended in a massacre. 7 people were killed. 28 were wounded. Among the dead, a 14-year-old girl caught in the crossfire. The Milperra massacre showed the country exactly what the Comancheros were capable of: organized, violent, and absolutely ruthless. By the 2000s, the Comancheros had evolved from a local Sydney gang into an international criminal organization. They had chapters across Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. But more importantly, they had figured out how to make real money and how to launder it. Here's something few people know: the gang's expansion was unintentionally helped by the Australian government. In 2015, Australia began deporting foreign-born criminals under Section 501 of the Migration Act. The rule was simple: if you committed a crime and weren't born in Australia, you'd be sent back to your home country. But many of the deported Comancheros had spent their entire lives in Australia. They had deep connections, criminal know-how, and leadership experience, and when they landed in places like New Zealand, they didn't vanish. They got to work. By 2018, the Comancheros had fully established a chapter in New Zealand. Within just a few years, they were trafficking $15 million worth of drugs between Auckland and Christchurch every few months. But their real genius was in how they laundered the profits. Most criminal groups are sloppy with money. The Comancheros were not. They developed a laundering system known to law enforcement as the Commission, a centralized and structured way of cleaning drug money. Here's how it worked. Every member who sold drugs had to pay a $5,000 fee per kilogram into a central fund. That fund was managed by senior leadership and used to purchase legitimate assets: clubhouses, businesses, real estate, even weapons and training gear. But the brilliance wasn't just in the fund, it was in how they disguised ownership. For example, a $1.6 million mansion in Auckland's Bucklands Beach wasn't purchased under a gang leader's name. It was registered under his 7-year-old son. Luxury vehicles, Range Rovers, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, were bought through shell companies and fronted by professional intermediaries. Weapons and training expenses were disguised as business costs. This was high-level financial crime, and it took years for authorities to unravel. Their downfall came from one fatal flaw: showing off. The Comancheros couldn't resist flaunting their success. They bought gold-plated Harley-Davidsons, a fleet of supercars, and wore designer clothes and jewelry. Range Rovers worth $280,000, a Lamborghini for $285,000, Rolls Royces priced at $364,000 and $595,000, $10,000 gold chains, and $13,000 Louis Vuitton bags. They lived in sprawling luxury homes and plastered their wealth all over social media. Police later described it as the gang's marketing strategy, a way to recruit new members and intimidate rivals. But it also made them a target. In 2019, Australian police launched Operation Nova, a massive investigation into the Comancheros' finances. What they found shocked them. This wasn't a gang laundering cash through dodgy car washes and restaurants. It was a professional criminal network operating like a corporation with accountants, lawyers, and brokers, all helping to move illicit money under the radar. And yet, despite its sophistication, the entire empire began to unravel piece by piece. This was no ordinary criminal enterprise. It was a highly sophisticated operation that involved lawyers, accountants, and other professionals. The gang had recruited what police referred to as professional facilitators, legitimate business people who helped them clean their money in exchange for significant fees. One lawyer was arrested for allegedly helping the gang structure complex financial transactions to avoid detection. An accountant was investigated for creating shell companies and trusts. But these professionals did more than offer services. They provided something far more valuable: legitimacy. When a lawyer sets up a trust to purchase a multi-million-dollar property, banks rarely ask questions. When an accountant organizes a business deal, financial institutions assume it's above board. The Comancheros effectively built a parallel financial system that operated alongside the legal economy. But their most dangerous investment wasn't in property, cars, or businesses. It was in people. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Police discovered that the gang wasn't just laundering money to fund a flashy lifestyle. They were using their cleaned cash to build a private army. According to investigators, the Comancheros brought a former U.S. Marine to New Zealand to train members in advanced combat tactics. This wasn't basic self-defense, it was military-grade training designed to create a covert unit capable of carrying out violent, organized operations without leaving any trace behind. This unit was known to police as the Ghost Team, a group of highly trained members who were funded directly through the gang's commission system. They purchased military-grade equipment, established private training facilities, and essentially formed their own Special Forces Squad. By 2024, the Comancheros were no longer just an Australian motorcycle club. They had evolved into a global criminal syndicate, with chapters and operations spanning multiple countries. In New Zealand, they were moving millions of dollars worth of drugs between Auckland and Christchurch. In Fiji, police intercepted 39 kilograms of cocaine with a street value of $20 million. Members were also active in Thailand and other parts of Southeast Asia. But expansion brought competition, and competition brought violence. The Comancheros were preparing for war against rival gangs, police, and anyone who threatened their growing empire. Their laundering system wasn't just about hiding drug money anymore. It was about funding a global organization capable of challenging governments and law enforcement. And for a while, it worked. Between 2018 and 2024, the Comancheros appeared unstoppable. They were making hundreds of millions through drug trafficking. They were laundering it successfully through legitimate investments, and they were expanding their reach across international borders. Police knew the gang was involved in criminal activity, but proving it was another matter. Their money laundering network was so well structured that tracing illegal funds back to drug sales was nearly impossible. When authorities searched their homes, they found luxury cars and jewelry, but no drugs. When they examined the gang's finances, they found clean, well-structured investments and registered businesses. They had learned from the mistakes of other criminal organizations. They kept their drug operations completely separate from their financial dealings. They used professionals to build layers of protection. Their wealth looked legitimate, their assets were clean, and their network was nearly airtight. But even the most sophisticated empire has its weak points. The first major breach came in March 2024. New Zealand police launched Operation Scuba, a major investigation targeting the gang's financial infrastructure. Several senior Comancheros were arrested, and authorities seized $5.8 million in assets, including homes, luxury vehicles, and nearly $1 million in cash. But what really changed the game was this. Police had cracked the gang's financial structure. They now understood the commission system. They had identified the professional facilitators, and they had followed the money. For the first time, law enforcement had a clear map of how the Comancheros turned drug profits into seemingly legitimate wealth. But what truly shook the organization came from within. Behind the scenes, someone had flipped. Court records revealed that a high-ranking member of the Comancheros had pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with police. This wasn't a low-level foot soldier. This was someone with intimate knowledge of the gang's inner workings. This individual had direct insight into how the commission system operated. They knew who the facilitators were. They could point to specific transactions, name names, and explain how the network had stayed hidden for so long. For a gang that prided itself on loyalty and brotherhood, this was unthinkable. But it was happening, and it would lead to the most devastating law enforcement action in the group's history. In August 2024, police launched Operation Avon, executing 70 simultaneous search warrants across New Zealand. The target, the Comancheros drug distribution network between Auckland and Christchurch. Every member of the Christchurch chapter was arrested. 22 people were charged with serious offenses. Police seized 6.5 kilograms of methamphetamine, 4 firearms, and over $220,000 in cash. But the true victory was intelligence. Investigators recovered detailed records of financial transactions, evidence of the commission system in action, and communications outlining the inner mechanics of the money laundering operation. For the first time, police had undeniable, comprehensive proof of the Comancheros' criminal empire. Operations Nova, Scuba, Avon, and Tyrannor showed that even the most complex criminal organizations can be dismantled through patient investigation and international cooperation. The Comancheros believed they had created an untouchable empire. In reality, they built a case study in how to destroy one. This story is about more than just money and violence. It's a reminder that even the most dangerous syndicates have vulnerabilities, and that the combined efforts of law enforcement can bring them down. From William Ross's brutal leadership in the 1960s to the calculated financial crimes of the 2020s, the Comancheros transformed from a local biker gang into one of the most dangerous criminal networks in the Southern Hemisphere. They built a financial empire worth hundreds of millions. They corrupted lawyers and accountants. They funded military-style operations. They extended their reach across continents. But in the end, they collapsed under the weight of their own success. Their obsession with wealth and power made them easy targets. Their flashy lifestyle drew attention. Their digital footprints betrayed them. And their growing list of enemies gave police the informants they needed. Today, the gold-plated motorcycles are gone. The supercars have been confiscated. The luxury properties are frozen. The commission system is exposed. The empire has fallen. The story of the Comancheros is no longer a tale of criminal brilliance. It's a warning. No matter how clever the scheme, no matter how clean the money looks, crime eventually catches up. And now the world knows exactly how they built their empire and how it was destroyed.